Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, the CEO and President of Brokerage Up and RealEstateCoach.com, and I'm very happy to welcome my good friend, Tyler McKenzie. He is the past president of the Seattle King County Realtors. He's been Realtor of the Year for the Washington State Association, and he's just taken a position as the Professional Standards Chair for his association as well. And he's a broker owner for John L. Scott in West Seattle. So Tyler's got such a wealth of information. Thank you for being with us today, Tyler.
Well, thank you, Bernice. It's always a pleasure. Wonderful actually seeing you. Usually we've done this by phone in the past, so this is far more fun.
Well, I tell you what, it's been so much fun to be able to move on to Zoom and actually have a conversation with a person rather than talking at the phone. So, you've been at, Seattle has certainly been on the cutting edge in so many ways in terms of technology, and also, there's been a lot of disruption. Seattle's been one of the places in the country where there's been a great deal of it. But the disruption's taking place. It's not just, the marches or the protests, but the disruption's taking place in the marketplace as well. So could you say a little bit about how your market in Seattle has changed, how the pandemic changed it, the pace, what's happening in the downtown areas? Just kind of give us that overall picture of what's happening in the Seattle marketplace at this moment in time.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I would say for your listeners who are not in our region, don't believe all the press. Seattle is not falling into the abyss. We don't have riots on the streets, and the city is doing just fine. It has not been overrun by various factions, as you might be led to believe. We're continuing to do business. Actually, our real estate market has remained really steady and solid. For your listeners, our spring market usually is the busiest time of year for us, as is the case across most of the country. We don't have quite the peaks and valleys that you might see in markets where weather really plays a more impactful role. For instance, I would think of Minneapolis being a good example. So for us, our spring market typically starts in the middle of January, and will continue consistently through the end of June. And then it plateaus into the doldrum months of summer, and then we get a bit of a spike in the fall time, and then we pick up again in the beginning of the fourth quarter the following year. This year, because of COVID, we definitely have seen some changes. I would say that the spring market has been extended into the summer months. We're still seeing lots of multiple offers. Most of our market times across most market sectors in the city and beyond are in the 30 days to 45 days range. We live and work in West Seattle. We have an interesting dynamic here because we have one very large bridge that connects us to the rest of the city. And lo and behold, right around when the governor shut down all of our businesses, our bridge broke. So West Seattle essentially is a community of 100,000 people who are now more or less disconnected from the rest of the city. And what we've learned in this is that we actually can work from home, and we can continue to sell houses, and our clients can continue to work from home. And while it's been disruptive, it hasn't been so disruptive that it's really impacted our local market that terribly. So we're relieved for that. Overall, as I mentioned, across the region in the greater metro area, market times across most price points are somewhere in the 30 to 45 day range. The downtown market has been impacted as sort of an outlier to the region by restaurant and bar closures, our museums, our symphony halls, our clubs. And those are the kinds of things that people who are investing in the condominium market, especially in a city like Seattle, where we have so many young people working at companies like Amazon and Google, it's making it difficult for those buyers to really envision what life downtown might look like. And it's going to stay that way until these businesses have an opportunity to really open up again, and that vibrancy is returned to the streets of the downtown corridor.
I think this is a very interesting discussion because you've got the inventory increasing in downtown. The question is how long before that flattens out, or if it continues to go up, then there should be, it gets out to 5 or 6 months of inventory, you're going to start seeing price declines. Have you seen anything yet?
Well, we're already seeing price declines. So nationally, a balanced market is in the 6-month range.
Mhm.
In the metro region of our part of the country, I would say it's more 3 to 4 months. So when we start seeing 3 to 4 months of inventory, that's a balanced market for us. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what the question I had is how you were coaching your agents. If you think you've got someone who owns a property downtown, is, maybe it's time to get out of that now rather than later if there are going to be price declines.
I think so. I think that's one strategy, frankly, Bernice. The other strategy might be just to simply hold your own. And because there are likely to be price declines, but there are also likely to be rapidly appreciating prices as well once those neighborhoods come back online, because we still have a lot of pent-up demand. The depression in condominium prices in the downtown corridor, in my opinion, is really more fear-based than economy-based in a market like Seattle's. And this isn't to say that Seattle isn't being impacted economically. It certainly is, but it's also the kind of market, because of its white-collar technology base and because of its diverse economy, it's the kind of market that can rebound really quickly. And I think we're going to see that. I would also say that I've got several clients, and my brokers have several clients. And for those of you who aren't in Washington, broker means agent in our market. So our agents and my own clients who are in the technology sector really are saying, you know what, it hasn't affected me. But those buyers are not the first time buyers that would be moving into the condominium market downtown. That frankly just isn't my client base anymore. So, for somebody who's just relocated to the Seattle region who wants to know what it's like to take a walk and enjoy the nightlife of Belltown, it's going to be a few months before they get to have that experience again, and hopefully just a few months.
Well, what it strikes me kind of as a takeaway for our listeners here, obviously across the country, is that when we think about like winter time, and it's hard to envision what the summertime, we're going to fall right now. Great thing to do is make sure you get your pictures of how great things look right now before, if you've got the snow coming in later. But then what you're talking about here, if you've got, if you've taken any videos of what the nightlife is like or the restaurant scene or any of that, those kinds of things in the past, this is the way it's like sharing that video from the springtime, next winter, or sharing the photos or anything that supports the lifestyle.
That's a great point. And we do actually have, our brand has videos that are neighborhood specific. So those are tools that are available to our particular agents. Obviously it is July, and the last time a neighborhood, or August rather, and the last time a neighborhood was booming in downtown Seattle was in February. So unless you've got some good canned footage, you're probably going to have to wait until the next cycle, or go find some generic footage that you have a license to use. So a word of caution to agents, make sure that you actually have usage rights before you assign anything to your broker, to your listing.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Make sure you have, the best thing to do on that is to shoot your own, then you don't ever get into trouble that way. So
I agree, but don't mention your name in it. so
that too.
That is.
So that's a good distinction. So if this video is going to be used for the MLS, it has to be unbranded, at least in your area. But your regular marketing videos, fire away. It's like you're going to have your name, your telephone number on it, and you need to have the visual and the auditory, because I forget what the percentage is, but it's very high, the number of people who watch YouTube videos at work without the volume on. So you want to have that visual and the auditory. We were talking about this before, how important collaboration is right now in today's market, not only kind of in your own firm, but, with the other people in your market. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, when you say collaboration, I mean, I guess first and foremost, let's all remember that we're independent contractors, and thus we are competitors. So you've got to find the balance between knowing how to advocate for your own business and for your clients' best interests, while also being able to idea share with people in your industry. I think it's important that a rising tide lifts all boats. So from a collaborative standpoint, I would say that especially with COVID, if we see that there are members of our profession who aren't adhering to, into the governor's mandated stay order, then that might be a place where you're going to want to interact with that person and maybe say, hey, we're all in this together. We need for you to adhere to social distancing and other requirements, because if you don't, the governor is going to come down on all of us. And that impacts everybody negatively. So that's an example of where if we all collaborate and work together, then the industry at large is protected, as are our clients, and everybody benefits from that.
I think sometimes agents forget that, your clients come and go, but the people you do business with, a lot of them are going to be around 20 or 30 years. And it's good to have a good
Absolutely.
working relationship, especially if you're in a multiple offer with a listing agent and you've done deals with them and you've been great to work with, and somebody hasn't, your offer is going to be more likely to get accepted.
You know what? Absolutely. And I think a lot of new brokers either aren't trained to this way of thinking or simply don't, consider it. But all of our, all real estate is local. So even though my service area or the service area of my agents might be the greater metropolitan Seattle and beyond, odds are most of our business is going to be conducted locally, closer to home. And because of that, you're interacting with brokers, you're from agents from other companies that you're likely to see every day. Whether it's now, currently in COVID conditions or post-COVID, where we're all back in our cars and we're doing open houses and whatnot. And reputation really matters. Your reputation could be the thing that, as you rightly pointed out, gets your client across the finish line in a multiple offer situation. If an agent thinks, or if an agent remembers a bad transaction or a bad experience with me, then that agent might be counseling their clients that I'm not somebody that they may want to work with. And I'm not prepared to take that risk in my own business, and I wouldn't understand why anybody else would either. And I would also caution that it's far too easy to let your ego creep into the transactional process. This is about representing our client's best interests. It's not about us winning or proving that we're smarter than the next person. Just do your job, advocate for your clients, do so with a smile, adopt a win-win attitude until you're given a reason not to, and get the job done.
What great advice. Now, one of the things, you had some interesting, when we were prepping for today's show, you had some interesting ideas about, I thought were kind of innovative. And one of them was something with Bombbomb and offers. Could you say a little bit about that? And first of all, some people may not know what Bombbomb is. So explain that and how that would work with an offer.
Absolutely. Bombbomb is it's a video app that is associated with your email. So effectively, you can send videos, you can record them on your desktop or your laptop or your smartphone, and you can attach that to an email and you can send it out to your client or your database. So for instance, if you're doing a monthly marketing campaign and you want to talk about what's happening in the marketplace in your neighborhood, you might do a Bombbomb video presentation and then send it out to your 100 clients or 200 clients in that particular market sector. On the peer-to-peer front, one of the practices that I've adopted in my own business, and I've encouraged our team members in our company to do the same, is whenever I'm presenting an offer by email, because obviously I can't do it face to face now, I attach a video. And it's a peer-to-peer introduction. Hey, John, I just wanted to tell you how I'm excited I am to represent my clients in this transaction. Here's their offer. I might talk about their financing. I might tell the listing agents that my client's lender is standing by to take their call so that they can tell them about how well qualified they are, so on and so forth. And what it does is it just adds a personal touch. Remember to smile. Adds a personal touch. And it says that you're prepared to go above and beyond the next person. And I can tell you that on the listing side, now about 80% of my business is listing oriented. I have never received any kind of a presentation like that from a buyer's agent, ever. So if I haven't seen it, it means that nobody's doing it. And if they're not doing it, they should be doing it, because 80 to 90% of the time, if I'm in a competitive offer situation representing buyers, and it's apples to apples, meaning that the competing buyer isn't, outbidding us by $200,000, we win.
Mm-hmm.
We 80 to 90% of the time over the course of my entire career, I've tracked those numbers, we win. And it is my willingness to evolve with technology and think a little outside the box, and to make sure that I'm presenting to, on behalf of my client, a really polished, well-considered offer. Oftentimes, even at a purchase price that's lower than the competing offers, we win because of those steps.
That's a huge takeaway. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a Bombbomb video. It can be, you can make it on Zoom, you can make it with your phone. I mean, the idea is, and I thought this was one of the most brilliant ideas I've heard. Now, the other thing, we know people want to be safe, and it used to be get the highest possible price in the shortest amount of time. And now we've got to add, keep your family safe while doing so. But you had a really interesting comment that I've never heard anybody talk about before. We know about Zoom interruptions, kids and animals and all that sort of thing. But I haven't seen anyone talk about, Tyler, is about doing a Zoom walkthrough or a video walkthrough of the property, and the, like what's on the walls and the other kinds of things that people don't think about. If you could elaborate on that.
So there are a few things that come into play, and thank you for asking that question, because I think it's hugely important and we don't think about it enough. And you just touched briefly on really sort of the thing that triggered it in my mind, and that is that we're doing Zoom calls with our clients and we see the kid in the background, or we see grandpa in his t-shirt, and it's introducing to me to an aspect of their lives that they may not be aware I'm experiencing. And the same thing applies to a possible Zoom property tour. If you're doing it, so if I'm representing the seller, the counsel I'm going to give to my client is, if you have a gun safe, keep it locked. If you've got good artwork on the walls, think about whether or not you want members of the public to see it. If you've got valuables lying out on the credenza, think about whether or not that's something that you want members of the public to see, because for the obvious reason that if you introduce somebody to a private property and there are things in that private property that might be enticing, then there's risk to the seller. And on the buyer's side, I would also say equally, if you see a Nest security device on the wall, or if you see something that triggers the thought, do I need to make sure that the code for that is reset when I take possession of the house? That's a conversation you should be having as well. So from an overarching security perspective, don't expose your sellers and their belongings to things that they may not want the public to see. And on the buyer's side, pay attention to what you're looking at, because you may actually see things that give rise to whether or not you should be reprogramming devices when you take ownership of the property. Think of it this way. If you don't reprogram the garage and the seller is pissed off at you because it was a nasty transaction, What's to stop the seller from driving up and down the street and opening and closing your garage?
Something I would have never thought of, Tyler.
I'm not saying that I've ever seen it happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if it hasn't somewhere in the country.
Oh, nothing surprises me anything more about
Oh,
this
and
business.
actually, one other thing, and this is really, really important in this age of ring and nest. In Washington State, it is illegal to record a conversation without the consent of the person who is being recorded. In New York, you can do so. I believe. I'm not an attorney, but I believe that in New York State, it is permitted for one person to record a conversation without getting the permission of the other. So the problem, obviously, is that if somebody's doing an inspection or they're doing a walkthrough and the seller has their security system turned on and they're recording the conversation, they can hear what the party might be saying. So imagine that there's somebody who's, trash talking the house and they're writing an offer on it. Well, the seller might not be inclined to accept their offer, or they're talking about all of the things that they want to, have the seller correct. Well, now the seller's got advanced knowledge of that. So really, really important that in counseling your clients, the sellers understand they're breaking the law if they record an audio or if they have an audio recording of the buyer. And the buyer may not want to be overheard saying things that the buyer didn't want the seller to know.
For many years, I've been training something called Shut Up and Sell. And now when you've got Alexa and, nanny cams, you tell when you're doing a showing, don't say anything about the house. The other side of what you were talking about, you talked about criticizing, the person says, wow, this house is priced $100,000 under the market, and then,
Right.
we were prepared to pay over 600, but gosh, they're priced at 550. So, that's, again, tell them to keep zip their lips.
Yeah, that actually, and you know what, Bernice, I hadn't thought of that. And you're absolutely right. Loose lips sink ships.
Or in this case, cost you deals. So Tyler, to wrap up today, what's your final piece of advice for our listeners?
This too shall end. So we've had the good fortune of hiring several new brokers to our office, new agents to our office in the past several months during this COVID period. And while it's probably a little more challenging for them to wrap their minds around what it means to be in this profession, I know that they're gaining a skill that is really unique as a result of this time that more seasoned brokers might not even be inclined to develop. So if you're seasoned, this too shall pass. Most major metropolitan areas across the country are still selling, they're doing well, which tells me that people are out there buying houses. Interest rates are below 3%. We've been talking about historically low interest rates now for the past 12, 15 years. They really are historically low right now. We've never seen them under 3%, to the best of my recollection. So, dwell on the positive, not the negative. If you're one of those agents who's got your head stuck in the sand, well, you get to own that. If you're somebody who's up and looking around and really sort of following the trends and recognizing that all markets are changing, whether it's a great recession or it's a great boom or it's a pandemic that we've seen, haven't seen for a century, markets change, and so must we. So just adapt.
That's the whole thing. The people who adapt and you stay up with the technology, you're going to have, the man I used to work for, said the reason, if you want to dominate the market, you just need to be 6 months ahead of the competition. And that's, I found that to be very true. So you're just looking for that one little edge that's going to get you out there a few more weeks than everybody else around you. We've been visiting.
Yeah, and a parting thought, Bernice, a parting thought is that don't be overwhelmed by the word disruption. This is a human business. It is relational, and it will always be relational. An algorithm can't walk up to a house and tell you if the roof needs to be repaired. Your clients are relying on you to be the expert, and they're relying on you to be the sounding board for their concerns. And those are things that no manner of disruption will change, in my opinion, at least not in my lifetime. And I think it's important to remember that, this is about people. People buy houses, algorithms don't.
Oh, I love that. People buy houses, algorithms don't. That's the best quote of the day, maybe of the week, I think, Tyler. We've been visiting with Tyler McKenzie. He's has the John L. Scott franchise in West Seattle, and broker owner, and just all these incredible roles you've had. Thank you so much for being with us today, Tyler.
Well, it's always my pleasure, Bernice, and your viewers should know what a powerhouse you are as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Great job.